On Kenya's remote northern coastline, a $3 billion experiment is rising from the Indian Ocean. Lamu Port was built with a bold promise to create a new gateway for Africa's fastest-growing economies and reshape who controls East Africa's trade. The timing could not be more critical. Africa's population is approaching 1.5 billion people. Global companies are actively diversifying supply chains, and control of physical trade corridors has become the ultimate form of economic power. In global commerce, true leverage belongs to nations that command key maritime choke points. For decades, East Africa's economic heartbeat ran through a single, congested needle, the port of Mombasa. But as global shipping lines scaled into massive megavessels, Mombasa hit a wall. It was too shallow, too crowded, and trapped by urban sprawl. So Kenya made a move that altered the region's geopolitical chessboard. Just 100 kilometers from the volatile border with Somalia, engineers carved a deep-water megaport out of Manda Bay. And for Ethiopia, a landlocked giant of more than 120 million people operating without a single mile of coastline, every port decision is a matter of national survival. Lamu represents a direct, high-capacity alternative connecting East Africa's largest landlocked market directly to the shipping lanes of the Indian Ocean. This is a high-stakes bet designed to redraft the trade map of an entire continent, link 3 nations, and challenge every established port in the Horn of Africa. To understand why Kenya risked billions on Lamu, you first have to look at the cold geometry of modern shipping. Modern megaships require a natural depth, or draft, of at least 16 to 18 meters. Mombasa's maximum depth caps out around 15 meters, requiring constant, expensive maintenance dredging to keep larger ships from running aground. Lamu Port's natural bay boasts depths between 17.5 and 18 meters without requiring initial capital dredging. It was engineered from day one to dock post-Panamax Leviathans, carrying up to 18,000 containers at a time. But Lamu Port was never meant to stand alone. It is the crown jewel of LAPSSET, the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport Corridor. LAPSSET is East Africa's largest multimodal infrastructure initiative, carrying an ultimate price tag of over $23 billion. The master plan outlines a 2,900-kilometer highway network, a high-capacity standard-gauge railway, crude oil export pipelines, international airports, and resort cities. The vision was clear: build an alternative economic spine across East Africa. A corridor that would liberate landlocked South Sudan and Ethiopia from their single-port dependencies while shifting the region's economic center of gravity into a newly connected northern frontier. So, how does Kenya turn a high-stakes $3 billion investment into a self-sustaining economic motor? The answer lies in transforming Lamu from a simple transit dock into an industrial manufacturing powerhouse. Under the Special Economic Zone (SEZ) framework, Kenya is offering aggressive tax incentives to attract international manufacturing, agricultural processing, livestock exporters, and chemical refining facilities directly adjacent to the port terminals. If raw materials from landlocked East Africa can be processed inside the Lamu SEZ and loaded directly onto post-Panamax ships, Lamu stops relying solely on transit cargo. It generates its own indigenous export engine. Freight is already beginning to move. Early commercial transshipment runs, livestock exports to the Middle East, and paved highway connections through Isiolo to the Ethiopian border at Moyale are proving that the frontier corridor is operational. To grasp what is at stake, we have to look decades into the future. What could Lamu become by 2050? If the full LAPSSET vision materializes, Lamu will no longer be a remote outpost. It will be the primary industrial engine of East Africa. By 2050, picture an expanded 32-berth deepwater terminal operating at full capacity. Picture freight trains cutting across the northern frontier, moving crude oil and minerals while carrying manufactured consumer goods directly into Addis Ababa and Juba. Picture an urban special economic zone where local workers manufacture exports for the entire Indian Ocean rim. History shows us that world-changing infrastructure is rarely judged fairly in its first decade. When the Suez Canal opened, critics called it a financial disaster. When megaports across Asia were carved out of swamps, skeptics questioned their scale. Lamu Port was never built for short-term returns. It is a 30-year strategic stake planted in the soil of East Africa, a calculated move to ensure that as the continent's population and trade explode over the coming decades, Kenya controls the ultimate gateway. Whether Lamu Port becomes the ultimate triumph of African spatial engineering or a cautionary tale of strategic overreach won't be decided today. But one thing is certain: Kenya has laid down its cards. The $3 billion bet is live, and the world is watching to see who wins the battle for East Africa's trade. Lamu Port is not being built in isolation. Across the western rim of the Indian Ocean, ports are competing for the exact same prize: control over the trade routes that will fuel Africa's next economic era. Infrastructure is never just asphalt, steel, and concrete. It is power projection. And by breaking ground on Lamu, Kenya steps straight onto an active geopolitical chessboard. For over 2 decades, Djibouti has held an effective monopoly over landlocked Ethiopia's international trade, handling upwards of 95% of all imports and exports flowing into Addis Ababa. This near-total monopoly granted Djibouti immense diplomatic leverage and lucrative port fees. As Ethiopia sought to diversify its trade routes, a high-stakes regional contest erupted. Somaliland's DP world-backed port of Berbera stepped in with a competing northern corridor. To the south, Tanzania's port of Dar es Salaam poured hundreds of millions into upgrading its own capacity. Even Mombasa pushed through aggressive terminal expansions. Lamu was Kenya's play to capture Ethiopia's lucrative southern hinterland. By offering a direct, high-capacity deep-water port connected via the LAPSSET highway, Kenya aimed to undercut competing fees and lock in regional economic leadership for the next half-century. A true race for the Horn of Africa has begun, and every completed kilometer of paved highway alters the balance of power. Yet, converting a bold architectural vision into an operational economic engine requires navigating 3 critical challenges that will determine whether Lamu reaches its full potential. The first is security along the frontier. Operating within geographic proximity of the border means transport corridors leading out of Lamu pass through historically volatile security zones. Guaranteeing the safe passage of commercial freight convoys across isolated northern terrain requires a continuous high-cost security commitment. The second challenge is the last-mile equation. A seaport can only process cargo as fast as the road and rail networks attached to its back gate. While the initial deep-sea berths stand completed, connecting thousands of kilometers of high-capacity railway and crude oil pipelines across remote terrain requires billions in additional capital. The third challenge is balancing global ambitions with local realities. For fishermen who have worked these Swahili waters for generations, the port represents both opportunity and uncertainty. Dredging, environmental preservation, and UNESCO World Heritage conservation mean the true success of Lamu will not only be measured in container volume, but in whether local communities share in its growth.